Are we back for day 18 of 28 days of Black American History Month? We in here, y'all. We 18 days in. We got 10 days left. I'm tripping, okay? Tonight, I wanted to do something super special and honor one of our ancestors who has paved the way for so many of us, who has, quite honestly built an empire, who has made a way for gays all over the world, LGBTQIA folks all over the world, trans women all over the world, and trans people in general all over the world. She has truly, for all of those of you who love to throw shade and spill tea nowadays, who like to read and do all of these different things that come from the Black American gay community, you have Crystal Labeija to thank for that. She is the creator of the house system from the Black ballroom culture. She is the mother of Black ballroom. She's the creator of it. Miss Crystal, the first, let me just start off by saying there's not a ton of information out there of her, which is exactly why I wanted to do this video. But also, I feel like, it's important that, Black gays, Black trans folks, relay our history, especially Black American trans folk and gay folk, relay our history, especially if you come from New York, child, because so much of our history ends up getting lost in the fold, and people, from just in general, people from all over just love to take and flip our history and take ownership of our history, the things that we create, our intellectual property, our things, and oftentimes the credit isn't given where it's due, but there are receipts for Miss Crystal, okay? One of the first I guess pieces of media or documentations was actually the documentary The Queen, which was done in 67 and released in 68, and that was one of the first things that a lot of folks saw Miss Crystal in. But she'd been competing in New York pageants for years at that point. She actually was one of the first queens to win any of the pageants because, they were racist. Just point blank simple, they were super racist. And, a lot of the Black queens weren't able to participate. But Crystal actually won Miss Manhattan. And, even still during all of that time, she was really just annoyed and over just all of the racism, that a lot of the Black queens had to endure during that time. A lot of the time they had to, in order to participate in these balls, which a lot of the time were ran by white gays, they had to wear whiter or lighter makeup, and just had to play all of these games and jump through all of these hoops. Y'all already know what it is. And she was over it. But again, she won Miss Manhattan. And the following year, I want to say, or that same year, in 1967, the All-American Camp Beauty Pageant, which was the beauty pageant that was featured in the movie The Queen, took place, and she took part in it. And during that pageant, she came in third, and she was hot. Okay, she was over it. She walked off the stage. And honey, they did not hear the last of it, because when she went behind the stage, honey, she was looking for the owner. She was looking for all of them. She was going in on Harlow, who ended up winning. She was looking for a flawless, not so flawless Sabrina, who really tried it during that pageant. And she was just going in, and she was one of the things she said that just tripped me out. She was like. She was like, Harlow, she's like, she was saying basically how Harlow wasn't beautiful. She's like, Harlow, she was like, Harlow looked terrible. She was like, don't bother Harlow. She was like, it's not her fault. She was like, Harlow, she was like, you're young, honey, you're beautiful. She was like, you deserve all the very best things in life. She was like, but you didn't deserve to win tonight. And she was like, I'm not saying that she not beautiful. She was like, I'm saying she not beautiful tonight. She was like, she doesn't equal me. The shade. She was reading all them girls. Um, but and see the thing too, and I'm glad that they documented it all and released it all. The white gays that were in the room had the nerve to tell her she was showing her color because she was speaking up for herself and all of these different things, and like she stood her ground. She stood her ground. She was going in on them. But subsequently from that, which is amazing. You know, Crystal was over it. She was over playing the game. She was over, you know, jumping through the hoops. Her and her sister, Lottie Labeija, that same year or that following year. I know that following year after the pageant, the film ended up showing at like Cannes and like all of that. But Crystal and Lottie Labeija created the Crystal and Lottie Labeija presents the first annual House of Labeija ball. And that was the very first ball for like the black ballroom scene. And from that spawned, you know, oh my God, everything that you think of when you think of the black ballroom scene, when you think of a lot of gay culture. Like I said, honey, when we stepped in, we took over. And I mean, we've always been here. You know, they were having balls in the 1800s. They were having balls, you know, for a long period of time, you know. Black drag queens had existed for forever, you know what I mean? So the history is there. I even read something even back in slavery that was a prominent drag queen that used to do drag during then. But, you know, within this space, creating black specific, you know, it was intentional that this was a black ball. The first ball was a black ball. She created the black ballroom scene. And in the black ballroom scene, you know, you have, you know, your dance portions, you know, a lot of you know Vogue. Vogue comes from the black ballroom scene, and even with Vogue, you know, there's the old way, which is very much so different poses and things like that. And then, you know, it evolved into Vogue as you see it today, where it's very like acrobatic, very just larger than life. And then you also have the the ballroom categories. So, you know, you have face. You know, if you give in face, honey, if you give in face, you give in face and you compete. You also have realness, which is like, you know, if you, for the trans girls, you know, if you serving realness, like if you can't clock, you know, which is, clocking is like if you can't call the trans person out or the person out as being trans or something like that. That would be like realness, like whoever's serving realness, whoever looks like a, you know. Some of the stuff is dated, we know this. Moving on. You have your butch categories. I guess the realness category could also include, you know, butch and all of that, or maybe it's reserved. I have yet to experience my first ball, so I've known about ballroom culture since I was probably like towards the end of middle school, high school, somewhere around there. I've yet to experience my first ball, and I'm so like anticipating going to my first ball. But they have luxury, glamour categories. They have all sorts of honestly, any kind of category that you can imagine has probably more than likely been thought of. But yeah, and you know, in building, what I also love about Mother Crystal, and what she was able to accomplish in not only creating the house system, which, you know, a house is, you know, a lot of the time, black, gay LGBTQIA folks would be thrown out of their houses because they were gay. Would have nowhere to go, you know, would struggle. Sometimes couldn't get jobs because they were trans or they were gay. You know, folks just turned their back on them, and they didn't have anywhere to go. So they created this house system, which was like a family. It was like a family that they could turn to, that they could rely on, that they could, turn to whenever they were down and out. There was a lot of sex work and stuff like that going on, because again, you have to think about the time. This is like during the 70s, the 80s, the 60s. Like within this time, being gay, being trans, being all these things, that was just not folks wasn't really having it, and there wasn't anything in place for people not to be discriminated against. So it was tough. They struggled. They really struggled, and they truly paved the way for all of us who are able to stand in our light today. Crystal created that. You know what I mean? She was the house mother of the House of Labeija, which was the very first house. Again, you also have, house fathers, so, gay men who identify as men, are fathers, and they do the same thing, support them, raise them. They are their parents, for better or for worse, So the fact that could have been implemented, and that Crystal was able to create that, you have to give her flowers. You have to give her flowers, because unless you live it, you don't know how tough it can truly be, especially if you're at an intersection where you're both black and gay. It's just, and black and trans, child. My trans sisters, I give love to and give it to every day, because a lot of people couldn't walk a day in their shoes, and that's the truth of the matter. I really wanted to shine light on Miss Crystal too, because again, we don't have a ton of information about her. There's not a ton of information prior to, her pageantry and those sort of things. And, even up until her death, there's not even an official, when she died. Folks know that she died of liver failure, and that she died either in 82 or around 93. But other than that, there's not much information. And, it's important that we document and we uphold our own, because even just doing the research that I could and seeing a lot of these publications, a lot of them white gay publications, documented on her, a lot of the information and a lot of the stuff about her is just really I don't know, it's a little all over the place. Really inclusive of all sorts of other folks, and kind of trying to, which inclusivity is great, but she was a black woman. We don't need to include all of these other people into her story, because it's not their story. It's her story. She created this. So with that being said, I think it's important for us to document our own things. It's important for us to preserve our own histories and make it, because we've seen it so many times before with hip hop, with with rock and roll, with all of these different art forms that come from us, country music, and the different inventions. We talked a little about the patents and the different inventions and stuff that we've created, how people would steal that from us. So many different things. We see it every day with the cultural appropriation. We see how people just feel like they have ownership of us and they can take from us, and that it's just okay. And I think with the evolution of ballroom culture and how it's become so much more mainstream, you see it on TV. Ballroom culture, if you're not familiar, is international. People in other countries of all races, of all everything, participate in ball culture. They have balls all over the world. A lot of the kids from New York and from the other places in the U.S. who participate in ball culture, have gotten tons of different opportunities and stuff, overseas and in the States, in regards to ball culture. It's put money in folks' pockets. It's done a lot. So for that, I'm super grateful for that, and I'm glad that all LGBTQIA folks are able to have that, and to have a home and to have somewhere where they can fully express themselves. But I truly believe that it is important that we never even give it a second. We never let anybody dismiss the fact that this is a Black American art form. This is a Black American culture. It comes from Black American culture. Voguing is a Black American art form. You know, because again, we've seen the erasure, and ultimately that's what it comes down to. We can't be erased from our own stuff. You know, just thinking about some of the things that I've seen, and I won't go in too much, but you know, even just hearing how other people kind of perceive some of the things that are being put out in regards to ball culture, whether it be TV shows, whether it be, you know, all of these things. I've seen competition shows and, you know, different things, and I think it's interesting to see how white gay, I guess, media and the powers that be within the white gay community kind of try, again, take ownership of this Black American creation. You know, it's really interesting, and it's one thing is like it's cool to, because again, let me just be quite frank, you know, seeing in countries all over the world, not even just in the United States. Like, I know what we go through here in the United States as Black LGBTQIA folks, but seeing what folks all over the world go through, you know, people are still being murdered. You know, people are still being murdered for being gay and trans and, you know, everything in between. You know, places all over the country, all over the world. People are being killed here, but it's a lot tougher. People are still being thrown in jail. You know, gay marriage is illegal in a lot of places. People know in certain places, I've heard, like, if they find out or they see that you're, like, with, you know, another person of the same gender, like, they'll kill you, straight up. And so with that being said, I try and leave that space of grace in that regard, because like I said before, I really love the fact that this Black American trans woman was able to create this space where people can be free, where people don't have to suffer the discriminations, even within the gay community, because you have to even recognize the fact that even in the gay community, I mean, obviously from this pageant, as I mentioned before, they were super racist, but like, you know, white gays wouldn't allow us into bars. White gays wouldn't allow us into these spaces a lot of the time. And then when they eventually did, folks would suffer, as Crystal did. So for her to create a space where folks can come and be free and get their entire life and be empowered and all of those things, that's a magnificent thing. That's something to be super proud of. And I'm super proud of Miss Crystal Labeija, y'all. You know, and what she's done for Black gay boys like myself, and like trans folks, and, you know, Black folks from all over the world. You know, I've seen and even talked to Black folks of the diaspora and stuff, and who are gay, and trans, and just seeing and hearing, you know, what ballroom culture and you know, even just coming to America and engulfing themselves in what Black gay life here is like, and what we've created here, and what it's done for them, and ultimately not necessarily being able to do what they do here in their own countries. I think that is a beautiful thing. I think the fact that we, as Black American gay folks, the way that we've kind of created space and created culture and built each other up in some of the hardest of circumstances as Black Americans and as Black American gay folks, it's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing, and I can't say it enough. My fear is just that it becomes whitewashed, that it becomes, you know, that we don't have ownership, that we're not able to profit off of our own culture, that we're not able to tell our own stories, that we don't have autonomy of ourselves and our stuff, that people, as time goes on, are telling our stories and us not having ownership and agency. I fear that because I've seen it already, and I know, and I feel like folks will probably be like, oh, he's talking around Pose and all of these different things. I'm not. But the truth of the matter is there were a lot of issues with that show. And a lot of people spoke about it, the colorism, all the things. White man ran that show, created that show. Him and an Afro-Latino guy, which a good chunk of the main cast is Afro-Latino, which is fine. But the idea is that this is an origin story. And while all of those people existed in that space at one point in time, the creator of the Black Ballroom space was a Black American woman by the name of Labeija. I see in these competition shows where it's just a lot, y'all. It's a lot. But yeah, my hope is that we continue to have autonomy, and I love the folks that are showing up in the space and making it known. If you ever, I grew up, again, I've been watching since like middle school, high school, grew up watching, the ball. I couldn't attend the balls, but I would watch the balls like on YouTube and stuff like that, and would get my entire life child. And just some of the figures who've come from the Black Ballroom scene, and yeah, just loving them and just being inspired by them, and yeah, it's an amazing thing, and I couldn't imagine my life without it, y'all. I really couldn't. But with that being said, this was day 18 of the 28 days of Black American History Month, y'all. Miss Labeija, y'all, get into her. I'll probably post her video from the documentary Queen sometime this week. But if not, definitely check her out on YouTube. Labeija, just type it in, she'll come up. Or you can watch the documentary Queen if you want. But if you watch the documentary Queen, I highly recommend Paris is Burning as well. A little balance. That'll give you a little more insight as well to the Black Ballroom culture. But yeah, with that being said, y'all, I'm going to get out of here. It's been real. I'll talk to y'all tomorrow.